looking at World War II, and y'all know, like I said earlier, how World War I, specifically the Treaty of Versailles, starts World War II. And what we're going to look at is what happens in World War II to set up the Cold War. So you should have two note sets, one called Wartime Conferences, which we're going to use in a second. The other one, it says the War in the Pacific, right? And that's hole punched on top, right? But my person who hole punched should have actually hole punched World War II in Europe. Okay, we're going to start off with World War II in Europe because you have to understand what event brought us into World War I. What was that event? The attack on what? Pearl Harbor. And you have to understand that is where our biggest aircraft carrier fleet is of the Navy. When the Japanese come in, remember, did Roosevelt know? So did he leave all of our boats in port? Did he leave them all in port? No, because they would have obliterated all. So he sent some on excursion. So there, but he had to leave some in there, which we talked about, to be sitting ducks, right? So we know that they attack at Pearl Harbor. We know they attack at Manila. We know they attack at Wake. We know they attack at Guam. But basically, our 30 aircraft carriers that we had in the Pacific, we now only have 10. So can we immediately go attack Japan at this moment? So you have to understand now, we have 10 aircraft carriers. They have 30. Who dominates in the Pacific? Japan. They control 1/6 of the world's Earth's surface because they have taken over. Because has the U.S. stopped them? So can I start on the Pacific, the battles? No, because the first question on your study site, it asks you to identify what the ABC strategy was, right? Can we go get Japan now? Why not? Our aircraft carriers are gone, right? We only have 10 to their 30. It's not going to work. So we have the ABC plan, which is go get Germany first. So what we're going to look at is World War II in Europe, and we're going to look at the causes. The harshness of the Treaty of Versailles. Who is the Treaty of Versailles so harsh on? Germany. They had to lose their military. They lost land. They had to pay reparations. Who uses that as propaganda to galvanize this country? Hitler. We're going to also see appeasement. Hitler wanted new lands, and did they appease him? Yes. What does appease mean? To give in, to give them, right? To please them. Okay? It's a vocab word in English. I know me and Scott were just talking about it. Okay? Also, the weakness of the League of Nations. Did the League of Nations ever come in and stop Hitler from taking whatever he took over? No. They were a dog with all bark but no bite, right? They had no military to enforce this. Okay? They had an economic worldwide depression, which we talked about the London Economic Conference. Did everybody go? And because nobody went, that conference failed, and then this led to the rise of totalitarian governments. We see Hitler takes rise in Germany, we see Mussolini in Italy, and then we see Hideki Tojo and Emperor Hirohito in Japan. So what we're going to look at is World War II and what starts it off. Really, it starts off with Hitler's invasion of Poland. Last year in world history, you learned that Hitler realized from World War I that he had a two-front war. And could they win with a two-front war? So Hitler is going to sign the non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union. They basically promised they would not attack each other. Most people don't realize that they also agreed to dividing up Poland. So do y'all see how Germany comes in and gets this part of Poland? And then the Soviet Union gets this part. We also know that the Soviet Union is going to come up and get Finland. The other thing is that Hitler will eventually invade areas of the Scandinavian countries and take it over as well. They are agreeing to not attack each other and to divide up the territories that have been taken away from them in World War I. Hitler will then invade Denmark, which we know the Soviet Union invades Finland. He invades Denmark and Norway. And many people don't know why. Why is he going to Norway? Okay. Huh?
Aryans.
Well, there is Aryans there. Remember, he wants to create Lebensraum, living room space for the Aryan race, okay? But the other thing, bless you, is that he realizes he wants to create a bomb. And y'all know the atomic bomb. Y'all read about it in Burdens of Power. Were his scientists really doing all-out speed to make this bomb? They purposely slowed down. But what Hitler is doing, he's taking over areas that have the things that you need to build an atomic bomb. First off, uranium. That was in the Rhineland, okay? Coal. But the other thing you need to have to start off this chain reaction is a type of water that is called hard water. And I know that sounds weird. All water's hard, right? Okay, but he's going into these areas because they have hard water and also a living room space for his people. Okay, so do y'all understand why he takes over Norway and Denmark? He doesn't take over Sweden because the Swedish just hand over their chocolate and he says, okay, we're fine with you. That never happened. I'm just joking. Okay. Okay. So now France is freaking out. They realize we're going to be attacked by Germany. So they create the Matignon line. Right? There's the strong fortification. There's the weak fortification. So which way do you think Germany's going to invade? The weak. They're going to go through Belgium like they did in World War I, obliterate it in a week, and in 6 weeks, the whole of France will fall. Okay, so now, if we look at a map of Europe, Germany comes in with their troopers, and they basically take it over. Okay, look how much he controls. He controls nearly everything. The reason why Spain is not controlled, they're in a civil war with Francisco Franco, which you studied last year in world history. No one will penetrate the Alps, so Switzerland is fine. And no one's going to invade Sweden because, again, the Swedish just give their chocolates and everybody's fine. Okay? That's just made up. But do you understand everything he has taken over now? So now, who are the two people he faces off to actually fight? Britain and who else? The Soviet Union. But what has he promised the Soviet Union? He wouldn't invade in that non-aggression pact. So this is why the Battle of Britain occurs. The Battle of Britain occurs, and this is why you have to understand why he wanted France. He wanted France as a staging ground for the Royal Luftwaffe to be able to take off and start attacking industrial centers. And industrial centers are in cities. So he's attacking civilian populations that are creating the weapons for war. And he feels that if he attacks those industrial centers, Britain will surrender. But the Royal Air Force of Britain, what new technology do they have that is going to help them? What is it? The radar. And they're able to detect when the Germans are taking off from France, and they're able to win the Battle of Britain. So now, can he win the UK? So who will he eventually have to attack for resources? And that's why he will break the non-aggression pact. So we know Pearl Harbor occurs, okay? And this is what's going to officially bring the U.S. into the war, okay? He says it was suddenly and deliberate. Was it suddenly? Had we been having issues with Japan, okay? So the next thing we're going to look at is now the U.S. is officially in the war. But you have to understand why Stalingrad is so important, and y'all discussed this last year. So y'all know the Soviet Union stretches for 900,000 miles, right? It's huge. But under the Soviet Union, there's all these countries that end in stan. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right? Like Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, all these stands, right? The Soviet Union stands on the stands, right? Okay? But the stand countries are so important. They're rich in, first off, resources. There are a lot of mountains there, so there's a lot of coal. Also, a lot of those stand countries have oil. But the gateway into those stand countries is this city of Stalingrad. If the Soviet Union loses the Battle of Stalingrad, Hitler could go through Stalingrad and get into the stands. So can the Soviet Union let Hitler get Stalingrad? Right? So at the time of Stalingrad, I want us to go back here. Where do you think the Germans have moved all of their army? Or do you think they're going to have all their army over here or all their army over here? Are they going to be in the Western Front or the Eastern Front? Eastern Front. So you have to understand that the Soviet Union is facing the full frontal force of the German army. And now, the big three, if the Allies decide that they want a meeting, can Stalin go? So looking at Casablanca, Stalin is not there. Who is this? This is who? FDR, and this is who? Churchill. Who is missing? Because he's busy where? Stalingrad. Because can he let Hitler get through Stalingrad to get to the stands? Okay, so let's go back to this map right here. He is facing the full frontal force of the German army. You have to understand, by the end of the war, the Russians lose 20 million civilians and soldiers. compared to America's 250,000. Is there some animosity there? So what would be the big thing to move these soldiers? How would we get these soldiers off the Soviet Union? What would be the thing? Open another front. Where are the two possibilities of a front? Eastern, we're in the Eastern right here, right? The Western, yes, this is east to us, but it's west to them. The Western front, open up something in France. Open up something in France. Or where else could we open up something? Italy. Okay, Italy, we'd go North Africa, Italy. Which one would deter more Germans? If we were in Italy or if we were in France? France. So where do you think Stalin wants it? France. But the Allies, and this was question number 25 of your study guide, the Allies are going to open up the front in North Africa. Is that going to deter a lot of Germans? No, so at Casablanca, on your notes, it says the first conference involving only 2 of the big 3. Why? Who's missing? Because he's busy at what battle? And we're going to see Roosevelt and Churchill agree to invade Sicily. They're going to take over North Africa, invade Sicily, invade Italy. Is this what Stalin wanted? Is he still going to face the full frontal force of the German army? How do you think Stalin's going to feel that they picked this front? Betrayed, upset. This is the opening shots of the Cold War, Casablanca. Because of that, are more Soviets going to die? Because more Soviets are going to die, how do you think the Soviet Union is going to look at the U.S. and Great Britain? Traitors. How dare you say we are friends and in an alliance when you don't help me save my own people? And so Casablanca will then lead to the North Africa campaign. And in this North Africa campaign, we are going to go from North Africa. Casablanca was in North Africa. Okay? They're going to go from North Africa, get Sicily, and then invade Italy. I put Sicily and Italy together. Okay? Are there going to be many Germans who come here? No, but they're going to eventually get Mussolini to be overthrown by the people. So what has Hitler lost? An ally. Okay? But most people don't understand that this is led by Dwight D. Eisenhower and Patton. They're leading this air, sea, and land invasion. It's a practice round for what we will see in Normandy. I don't know how many of you have ever seen the opening scenes of Saving Private Ryan. And y'all see that, okay, I'll try to see it in a second if we have time. But this is going to be, if you ever seen the opening scenes, we see all the destroyers coming out. And the people, the amphibious ships that are carrying the men who are going to storm the beaches. Most people think that happens in Normandy, but it actually happens in Italy first. And most of y'all play sports or in some type of thing where you have to practice before you go. So do y'all just go to competition without practice? Well, the military doesn't go into military engagements without practice. North Africa was a practice round for what we will see in D-Day. Is Stalin happy about this? He's like, why are y'all practicing? I just needed you to go out there to France. Is he livid? Yeah. And so, at our next conference of Tehran, who's there? Stalin. Okay, why is he there?
So last time they didn't do it.
Okay, last time they didn't do what he asked, and he was busy at Stalingrad with a lot of Soviets dying. So he's there, right? Is he happy? No. He's not happy. How does Roosevelt look? Pretty happy, because have they had their practice round? And now there's Churchill there just being Churchill. Okay, so if we look at our notes at Tehran, you have to understand where Tehran is. It's in the Soviet Union. Okay? Why do you think Stalin made them come there?
To help,
so they can see what's happening.
They could see what's happening. They could see all the terror that has gone on in the Soviet Union. Can he really leave the Soviet Union? Do they kind of owe him for what they did in North Africa? Yes. So he made sure that they came on their grounds. So the big 3 meet, Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin. They meet for the first time, and they agreed that the British and the Americans would begin their drive to liberate France. Isn't that what he wanted? Why does he want France? What would that do?
Open another front.
Open up another front, but who would it deter from the Soviet Union? Germans. So guess what? We get, wait, haven't we practiced? This is a sea, air, and land invasion. Haven't we practiced this before? Yes. This is a cross-channel invasion from Great Britain to Normandy. We're going to see that these amphibious ships have men that will storm the beaches. I know y'all see blimps, and you're like, why do they have blimps? The blimps are dropping down supplies. And eventually we're going to get our B-52 bombers that are going to parachute men to storm the beaches. And what will occur is that this is the largest land, sea, and air invasion ever in history. And this invasion will storm the beaches of Normandy, and then this, by the end of the month, the Allies will have control of the whole seaboard to be now able to bring in men to lead to the liberation of France. The last thing I have to talk about is, oh wait, I didn't say this. The person who leads the D-Day invasion, his name is Dwight D. Eisenhower. Do you get it now? D-Day? Okay, it's the code name, but the guy you have to remember with it is Dwight D. Eisenhower, who eventually gets so popular that he becomes president. But do y'all get how to remember he's with D-Day? Okay, the next guy you're gonna have to know is with the Battle of the Bulge. Do you see it's Battle of Bulge? This is Omar Bradley. Bradley starts with a B. And there's a lot of people for EOC, we just need to know what nation they are with or what battle they're with. That's EOC stuff. So who's with this one? Bradley, because they have the Battle of the Bulge. And the reason why it's called the Battle of the Bulge, do y'all see the German offensive lines? It bulges out, okay? So it bulges out, hence its name, but this is the last German offensive. You have to understand that in this war, who do you think they trust with the guns? Do they trust the minorities or the white people? And I don't mean to sound racist or anything like that, but most people who are of color, if you're black, you're in the back. If you're Hispanic, you're a cook. If you're a Japanese person, they're probably using you to break code. If you're Navajo, they're using you to break code. If you're any person of color, you're either a cook or you're an engineer moving, and they say it's an engineer, but you're moving the dead bodies and the equipment. Okay? So in this war, our death toll is going up really high for our white people. The 1st battalions are done. 2nd battalions are done. 3rd battalions are done. Who do you think they need to call up by this time? The color people who are in the back. They're like, okay, we know you had basic training with guns. You don't know how to do a MODAR or whatever it is, but we need you here. And a lot of color people will step up in this battle. And because of the color people who step up in battle, they will cause the German offensive to deter. And they will go back into Germany. But I want us to think about medals. Do you think any of these people will ever get the Purple Star or the Gold Stars? They're going to get bronze clusters. Hey, my grandpa was involved in this battle. He was a cook in the back, and they were just like, get up. You need to go. And he got 3 bronze clusters. Never will you see any Hispanic at this time, any African American get anything above a bronze cluster, which is like the lowest of the medals.
Have they gotten it now? Or?
Today, yes, there has been several, like Vernon Baker. They have been like what he did in Italy, taking down a whole nest of Germans that were there. He actually got a Purple Heart for it. But it took the Obama administration to do that. So it's in the end, okay? So y'all got the Battle of the Bulge. Who was involved? Bradley, okay. At first, we had all white battalions, right? But did they need to call up the people in the back? Okay. Now we're having this conference. Okay, who's this guy right here? Churchill. Who's this guy right here? And who's this guy right here? Okay. Okay. They're a little bit happy because after the Battle of the Bulge, what are the Germans doing? They're retreating. They're going back into Germany. And so they're going to meet at Yalta and come up with the terms of the end of the war. The first thing they're going to do is they're going to divide Germany into 4 zones because they want an unconditional surrender. Because they realized last time they had conditions, and did Germany defy all those conditions? So they're going to divide it up and rebuild Germany and eventually unite the four sectors, the German of Germany, the U.S. sector, the British sector, the French sector, and the Soviet sector. They're going to unite after they rebuild. Do you think they're ever going to be reunited? No. This will eventually lead to East Germany and West Germany, which we'll see in the Cold War. The next thing here is that there would be free elections in the areas of Poland, Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, Czechoslovakia, Austria-Hungary. Do you think there will be free elections in those countries? Any time in history that you see free elections, from Vietnam to Korea to China to what we see in the Eastern Europe, they will never happen. Most of those countries will fall to what? Communism in the Cold War. The next day on here is the Soviets would enter the war against Japan on August 8th. And y'all had that on the back of your study guide. It asked you the day that the atomic bomb was dropped, August 6th, right? The day the Soviets came in, August 8th. The next day that the next bomb was dropped, August 9th. And there's a reason why it's around those dates. Because the U.S. dropped and tested our first bomb July 14th. So could we have dropped it earlier? And so we're going to do a reading, and y'all did this in Burdens of Power. We kind of dropped it to end the war and save lives, but we kind of did it because we were very fearful that we would have to divide up Eastern Asia with the Soviets, which we did in Korea, which led to problems. The next one, the Soviets would control the southern half of the Sakhalin Islands. Remember when we did our imperialism map, and there was that island that looked like a shark? That's the island, okay? Last thing, we would create a new peacekeeping organization called the UN. Why do we need to create the UN? What had failed us? The League. And so the United Nations will be a superior one to the League because it will have a military force. This is the last time you will see all three of them there. Because what's going to happen to Roosevelt? And then Churchill will not be re-elected as prime minister. Yes, so we'll have only one person left.
He's a big
What?
Which one?
He's got big shoulders.
That's his shoulder pads.
Oh, shoulder pads were in.
Yeah.
He's wide, yes.
Okay, so after y'all took, we're going to see that Hitler will commit suicide. Him and his girlfriend will commit suicide. Many people still think that Hitler's alive. There's all these series about Hitler. Huh? He's in Argentina. Okay. He's in Argentina. Okay. So Russians will basically, they will see the atrocities of the Holocaust. And again, were American newspapers advertising what was going on in the Holocaust? No. And as we go into Germany, and as Germany is defeated, we will see the remnants of the Holocaust. And Germany will surrender May 7th, and this is Victory Day in Europe. The war is done there. This has given the U.S. time to build up what? What do we need so we can continue the war in the Pacific? We need the naval carriers, right? And so what will happen, and y'all saw in the video that those women, every 2 weeks they're producing a new carrier. It used to take a whole year to make an aircraft carrier for the Navy. Those women, those Rosies are out there. They're riveting away. Okay? Don't get in the way of a woman, because a way of a woman, she's going to get it done. Okay? She'll build a boat. And if she doesn't like it, she'll make sure there's holes in it so you sink. Okay? So what we're going to look at is the war in the Pacific notes now. The war in the Pacific. And you have to understand, I told you that the Japanese, they're going to be imperialistic as well. There are several ideas that you learned in last year in world history that have started in China that will go into a lot of their territories that they used to control. One of them is that it was honorable to die for their emperor because they felt that their emperor was a deity, right? We saw this in China, that whole thing that the Chinese emperor was a son of the god, right? The mandate of heaven, okay? And so now we see this in China too. We saw it in Japan. We'll see this in Korea. The other thing, it's dishonorable to surrender, that whole seppuku, that you kill yourself before you get your enemy to kill you. The last thing is they believe that in racial pride of their nation. They believe their nation is superior. So you know we talked about white men's burden in America. Well, there's yellow men's burden in the East. The Japanese feel that they're by far the most superior yellow race. And so what is going to occur? I told you they took over 1/6 of the world's surface. And you're like, how did they do that? Well, you have to understand they went into nations that had oppressive motherlands, right? China. Had people been taking over China? So they went into China, and some of the Chinese people who did not surrender, they killed them. But some of them said, look, if you join us, we will liberate you from the oppressive British. And did they join them? Okay? They will go into Vietnam, where the French are, and they said, we will liberate you from the French. And did the Vietnamese join them? Okay? They will even try to go into India. Who's controlling India at this time? Britain. And they said, we will get you away from your oppressive motherlord. And do you think a lot of these nations turned to the Japanese? And so not only did they increase the world's surface by 1/6, but what did they do to their military? Increased it. They even go into the Philippines and they say, look, we will get you away from your oppressive motherlord. Who is their oppressive motherlord? The U.S. And the U.S. has said, we will free you by 45. Motherlord, mothership, whatever it is. Whoever's oppressing you. Sorry. Hey, I just watched Sonic the Hedgehog this weekend of the movies, and they call him the Donut Lord, the cop, and it's just like, that's stuck in my head. I'm sorry. Huh?
That movie was so boring.
It was a birthday party for my daughter's cousin, and I was like, oh.
I left. It was like
Yeah.
15 minutes into it.
I fell asleep. Okay, sorry people on the other side. Okay. Hey, I should have recorded in another class. Okay, the Philippines, do you think some of the Filipino people are going to jump on that bandwagon saying, yes, we want to be freed from the United States? And so they go into these nations. Not only do they get the land, but they also get people to add to their military. So this is what's going to make it hard as the United States goes closer to Japan. Because not only do the Japanese have their allies of people that they've taken over, but they have also are training their women and children to be able to be ready for an attack. So we know that the events of Pearl Harbor just don't happen out of isolation. We know that they've been galvanized by a couple of events. When Japan has invaded China, did the U.S. do anything? No, they were like, it's an incident. It's not a war. When they joined the Axis, eventually the U.S. puts an embargo on the sale of oil, steel, and rubber. What would that all be used for? Weapons, specifically airplanes. Airplanes. You don't understand that the Japanese used to buy U.S. old World War I planes. They would break apart the plane, rebuild the plane to make it better. Okay? Many people know the difference between an American bomber and a Japanese bomber. The American bomber flew higher, but the Japanese was just getting as close. And so when the U.S. pressed an embargo on that stuff, that upsets the Japanese. Then we freeze their assets. We break their code, and we know that they're going to attack somewhere on the Pacific, right? And then we see that they attack at Pearl Harbor, but they also attack at Guam, Wake, and Hong Kong, and in Singapore. I forgot to continue the rest of the places, but we're going to move on. So from December 1941 to May 1942, the U.S. only has 10 aircraft carriers. Can we really make it to Japan? So in this whole area, they take over 1/6 of the world's surface. And what the U.S. is going to try to do is they're going to try to go to the closest position we have to Japan, which is the Philippines. You have to understand that a B-52 bomber cannot, it has to be within 100 miles to be able to land with bombs, with soldiers, or whatever. So we're trying to get to the Philippines so that we can get closer by these islands to be doing an inland invasion of Tokyo. But the problem in here is who the Filipinos surrendered to. And so when MacArthur goes in, and you're going to have to remember MacArthur with the Philippines. MacArthur is on the Philippines. MOP, right? Okay? When he goes in, his troops are overwhelmed. They're all captured. Can they let a general get captured?
No.
Do we have enough aircraft carriers to go get our men? So they send in a destroyer just to rescue MacArthur. And all of his soldiers stay there. And what happens to his soldiers in the Bataan Death March? They're all died. All of them, 4,200 of them. We could not rescue them. And this is marked on MacArthur's heart, that he could not win. This is going to, the atrocities of what happens here brings to light how vicious this war is going to be in the Pacific. Because they could have taken them as prisoners of war, right? But they didn't. And this was that whole thing, that they're going to kill every single person that gets in their sight. So we're gonna see that even they go up to the Aleutian Islands, and there's many fear that they're gonna come in. So what will occur is we're gonna have to do a lot of carrier-based fighting to halt the Japanese. And so we have the Battle of Coral Sea, whatever, but we're gonna look at the Battle of Midway. Midway is so important. Okay, so I don't know if you knew what a carrier is. This is a carrier, okay? It is the biggest ship that is part of a wolf pack of the Navy. So they have the carrier that has all the planes. This is what they send off. Around it, they have the destroyers that protect it, and then they have the amphibious ships for the landings, okay? So Midway, this is what Midway is. What is Midway? It's an island with a what? A runway, an airstrip, and also a coaling station. If the Japanese get this, they can definitely do an inland invasion of the United States. So can we let them get Midway? Again, how many carriers do they have? 30. How many do we have? 10. We have a couple of more that are on their way. But Midway is so important. We're going to see in Midway, Chester Nimitz is in charge. Okay? So I always remember Midway, M and N, right? Go together. M-N-N-O-P, right? In the alphabet, M and then N's next, right? So Midway and Nimitz. Okay? So Nimitz is in charge of here. They need to make sure that the Japanese don't get this, because they could do what? Invade. They eventually are able to secure that Midway state's part of the United States. But what happens to the the Japanese offensive? Are they able to go any further? No, so now they're retreating. And this is a important turning point in the battle in the Pacific. So the U.S. realizes they've taken over 1/6 of the world's surface. Do y'all see the red line? Everything in that red line they've taken over. There are some islands that are well fortified. There are some islands that are less fortified. So where should the U.S. hit? The fortified islands or the less fortified? And that's what leapfrogging is. We're going to hop from less fortified island to less fortified island to less fortified island, because we need to get coaling stations. We need to get staging grounds so that we could take the next island. So then we just hop over the fortified island. So y'all get leapfrogging and island hopping. A lot of y'all left that blank on your study guide, but that's what it is. You don't need to write it down. Huh? I went backwards. Okay, sorry. FDR dies. And y'all have to understand, he wasn't even the vice president that he wanted. He had another guy named George Wallace. George Wallace helped create the New Deal, but the Democrats felt that he was too liberal. He was like the Bernie of his time. And so the Democrats, they wanted a more conservative Democrat, which is Truman. You have to understand Truman's prior career. He was a haberdasher. I don't know if you know what a haberdasher is. A haberdasher is not a tailor. A tailor fixes your suit, right? A haberdasher is a person that accessorizes and dresses men very nicely. Can y'all see how he's dressed very nicely? And he met most of the very prominent politicians in Missouri. And this is how he got into politics. And so he's in politics now, and he's addressing the best men. So he's very tied in. And so he's only been vice president for 80 days. Was this the guy that Roosevelt wanted?